My name is Michael Carr, former analyst inside the Pentagon. Among the hundreds of classified documents I handled, only a few left permanent scars on my memory. One of them was labeled Project Gateway. At first, it looked like another Cold War intelligence file, buried under technical language. But the more I read, the clearer it became. This was not about weapons or espionage. It was about the very fabric of reality. The document claimed that through specific mental techniques, humans could bend perception, travel beyond the body, and even pierce the illusion of time itself. The project was designed to explore consciousness as a weapon, and unlike most classified programs, this one had a trail of evidence too strange to ignore. The first section of the file was dry, almost scientific. It referenced brainwave frequencies, hemispheric synchronization, and something called resonance patterns. According to the scientists, when the human brain entered a particular state, reality itself became flexible. It was like tuning a radio, except the station was another dimension. What struck me most was the language. The barrier between physical reality and higher planes of existence can be penetrated by trained individuals. These weren't New Age dreamers. These were Pentagon-funded physicists and psychologists writing with cold precision. The project's roots, it claimed, went back to ancient techniques, meditation, out-of-body rituals, but now weaponized through military research. The file revealed that the Pentagon collaborated with an unlikely partner, the Monroe Institute in Virginia, a civilian research center known for studying altered states of consciousness. Founded by Robert Monroe, the institute had been experimenting with sound frequencies, so-called hemisync tones, that could allegedly induce out-of-body experiences. According to the documents, subjects exposed to these tones reported floating outside their bodies, traveling to distant places, and even entering what they described as non-physical realms. At first, the Pentagon dismissed these claims as fantasies, but when trained, participants started describing classified military installations they had never physically visited. The tone of the report shifted. The impossible suddenly demanded explanation. Deeper into the file were transcripts of actual gateway sessions. One subject, referred to only as Test Subject 12, claimed he could leave his body and hover over the Pentagon itself, describing corridors he had no clearance to enter. Another, Subject 24, claimed to travel beyond Earth, observing a structure on the far side of the moon. The language of the transcripts was clinical, detached, yet the content was beyond anything imaginable. The scientists noted consistent patterns of non-physical perception and even admitted that subjects sometimes returned with knowledge they could not have logically obtained. This was not just a psychological experiment anymore. It was a map to realities the Pentagon never wanted the public to know existed. One particular report froze me in place. It was dated June 1978 and described a session of Subject 17. Under deep synchronization, he claimed to have floated above the Earth, drifting higher until the planet itself became a glowing sphere below him. He described the thin blue line of the atmosphere, the blackness beyond, and then something else. A grid of light surrounding the Earth, pulsing as if alive. When the transcript reached the analysts, half dismissed it as hallucination, but the other half noted that multiple subjects, across different sessions, described the same glowing grid. The Pentagon file added a chilling comment in the margin: possible artificial construct. Further investigation required. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just fantasy. Too many hallucinations were identical. Another session described a breakthrough that went far beyond remote viewing. Subject 24, under heavy monitoring, reported that he was no longer bound to the present. He described slipping sideways through time, witnessing events that had not yet happened. At first, researchers dismissed it, but when he predicted the sudden death of one of the project scientists days before it happened, the entire tone of the program changed. The Pentagon didn't want visionaries or mystics. They wanted weapons. If time could be bent, if consciousness could leap forward or backward, then the gateway process wasn't just research. It was a tool, and tools could be used to control history itself. Inside the files, you could feel the tension between the scientists themselves. Some wrote cold, calculated notes, treating these reports as data points. Others allowed hints of fear to slip through their language. One entry read, "If these sessions are genuine, then our concept of reality is dangerously incomplete." Another warned, "Subjects risk psychological collapse if their consciousness drifts too far." The Pentagon, however, wasn't concerned with caution. They wanted results. The files showed pressure from military superiors demanding faster breakthroughs, stronger outcomes. Whether the subjects were breaking or losing their minds didn't matter. What mattered was proving that the gateway could become a usable technology, a weapon of the mind. The most disturbing transcripts were not about time or remote viewing, but about contact. Several subjects reported encountering presences during their journeys, entities that were not human. Subject 19 described them as shadows of light, watching from the edges. Subject 31 wrote, "They were aware of me before I was aware of them. They seemed ancient." The analysts noted these encounters, but marked them unverified. Still, the consistency was chilling. Different people, under controlled conditions, described similar beings beyond the veil of human perception. The file ended one section with a cryptic note, "If true, gateway opens not just to other places, but to other intelligences." As I read further, a disturbing pattern emerged. Several test subjects simply vanished. The files claimed they were removed from the program, but there were no follow-up notes, no exit interviews, no medical records, just silence. In one case, the final entry read, "Subject failed to return from projection." What did that even mean? Did their consciousness get trapped somewhere beyond our reality? Or did the Pentagon erase them, along with anyone who asked too many questions? The deeper I went, the more it felt like a cover-up. These weren't just experiments, they were sacrifices. And the government was perfectly willing to lose people if it meant progress. Buried in the later sections, the document shifted tone. No longer just analysis, but planning. Pentagon strategists outlined how the gateway process could give the US military an invisible advantage. Imagine soldiers who could scout enemy bases without ever leaving their bodies. Commanders who could see into the minds of foreign leaders. Or worse, agents who could reach into someone's subconscious and alter it. The words felt like science fiction, but the cold, bureaucratic tone made them even more horrifying. This wasn't fantasy, it was intent. And if the gateway truly worked, it meant the battlefield of the future wouldn't be fought with bullets, but with the human mind itself. Tucked between neatly typed pages, I found something strange. A handwritten note slipped inside the file. The handwriting was rushed, almost desperate. It read, "They're not telling you everything. The process doesn't just open doors, it leaves them open. Something came through. That's why they shut it down. That's why they silence us." My blood ran cold. This wasn't part of the official documentation. Someone inside the project had risked everything to leave this warning. If what they wrote was true, the gateway process hadn't just unlocked hidden powers, it had unleashed something uncontrollable. Soon after that note, I came across another section: medical reports of sudden and unexplained deaths among the staff. Perfectly healthy men and women, collapsing with no warning. The causes were always vague: cardiac arrest, seizure, stroke, but the autopsies didn't match the official claims. Several victims had severe brain hemorrhages, as if their minds had been overloaded from the inside. And yet, the project didn't stop. The Pentagon simply replaced the dead with new recruits, rewriting the files to erase any trace of failure. To them, it wasn't about safety. It was about results, no matter the cost. The more I read, the clearer it became that something had slipped beyond the control of the Gateway project. Several reports mentioned unexplained disturbances during meditation sessions, objects moving on their own, sudden cold drafts in sealed rooms, and participants claiming to hear whispers that no one else could. One soldier, during debriefing, described the presence as a shadow standing behind me, always just out of sight. Another said he felt something crawl into his mind and watch through his eyes. These weren't hallucinations, they were consistent accounts across multiple individuals. The Pentagon classified them as psychological side effects, but deep down, the truth was far darker. Buried at the bottom of the folder were memos marked urgent. They outlined new containment measures, soundproof chambers, constant monitoring, and the use of experimental drugs to suppress intrusive consciousness. One chilling line stood out: if contact is established again, terminate the subject immediately. Terminate, not treat. Not rescue, terminate. That single word told me everything. The Pentagon wasn't just afraid of what they had unleashed. They believed it was already inside their soldiers, using them as vessels, and they were willing to kill their own men to stop it from spreading. As I pieced the story together, a chilling thought gnawed at me. If these forces could infiltrate trained operatives, what would stop them from reaching beyond the walls of the Pentagon? Reports indicated that several discharged soldiers experienced episodes even after leaving the program. They saw figures in mirrors, felt pressure on their chest at night, and some even disappeared without a trace. The documents didn't call it possession, but the signs were there. These men weren't themselves anymore, they were fragments of something larger, something using them as doors. And the Pentagon's answer wasn't to close the door, but to silence anyone who realized it existed. One file contained a single-page note, handwritten and unsigned, slipped between official reports. It read, "They told us we were opening our minds. In truth, we were opening a gate. It does not close." If you are reading this, it already knows. You burn this before it sees through you. I froze when I read those words. For the first time, I wondered if my investigation had already drawn its attention. I looked over my shoulder, half expecting to see a shadow moving in the corner of the room, but there was nothing, only the heavy silence, pressing in like a weight. That night, as I sat alone in my apartment, I turned on an old shortwave radio I kept for research. I wasn't searching for anything, just letting the static fill the silence. But after a few minutes, the noise shifted. Beneath the crackle, I heard faint voices, not words, more like layered whispers, overlapping, impossible to isolate. At first, I thought it was interference, but then one of the voices cut through, clear and sharp, speaking my name. My blood froze. No one else knew I had the files. No one knew what I was reading, yet something did. I slammed the radio off, but the sound seemed to linger in the air, as if the static had followed me into the room. In the next section of the documents, there was a heavily redacted after-action report. It described a total cognitive blackout during one of the final Gateway trials. Every participant collapsed simultaneously, heart rate spiked, brain waves synchronized, and then flatlined. For 7 full minutes, they were clinically dead. When they revived, the room was different, lights shattered, cameras fried, and the observers reported an indescribable presence standing in the corner of the chamber. But the strangest detail was this: none of the participants remembered the experiment. Instead, they all woke up with the same phrase on their lips: "It's still with us." As I read the last files, I realized the Pentagon hadn't abandoned the project. They had simply buried it deeper, away from prying eyes, continuing in places the public would never suspect. The final memo confirmed it. Phase 2 initiated. Civilian trials pending. Civilian trials. That meant ordinary people like you, me, anyone, were already being tested, without their knowledge. Suddenly, Every strange disappearance I'd read in the news, every unexplained blackout, across cities, every rash of mass hallucinations, they all seemed connected. This wasn't history, it was happening now. I shouldn't even be telling you this. Every word I speak draws attention, not just from the government, but from whatever lies on the other side of that gateway. But you deserve the truth, even if it puts us both at risk. If you ever hear whispers, in static, if you ever wake up with memories you don't recognize, or if you feel a shadow standing just behind you, don't ignore it. That's how it starts. That's how it finds you. And remember, the Pentagon wants you to believe this is classified, contained, under control. But I've seen the files. I know the truth. It's already here.